Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Jutta, for the use of your wonderful home and all the beautiful things you've laid out for us. So we're in Ibiza and I'm going to do a quick talk about three things. First of all, why radiation is a problem in our lives, why it harms us. Secondly, we're going to go into the atom, the truth about the atom, the true concepts in science, and how that helps us to understand the problem, but also prescribe the solution. And then thirdly, we're going to talk about a new source of energy in our atmosphere, in our environment, that comes to us as part of the age of Aquarius, as part of the great sort of transcendence, if you like, the shift of consciousness, but also of the shift back into harmony with the earth, effectively. Because, as you're going to see a bit later, the key thing from our point of view is that the thing that is toxic is the electricity grid, right? And we're going to talk about why that is. So really, if we want to solve the problem completely, we have to replace the electricity grid with something that is in harmony with not just the human body, but also the whole environment, right? And that's the challenge, but we've got some good news in that respect. It's not something that we can put in overnight, but it's something that if we share knowledge about it, then we can empower ourselves to replace the old grid, which means that the fight is over, right? And that's got to be the good news here, right? Because there's a lot of people in this space who are going, fight 5G, oppose this, genocide this, they're killing us, and it doesn't get us anywhere because no one wants to hear that message, right? And everyone wants to use their phones. And that's understandable. So those are the three things we're going to cover, and let's crack on. So this is our lives today. If anyone wants to have a look at what this looks like, you can see through any radio frequency meter what's going on, and so this will have a look at what your microwatts per square meter is. Is this on? Mm-hmm. So if I put this next to here, then it's just jumped up from literally the proximity of this. It goes from about 53 microwatts per meter, 28, and then you put it next to here and it will go up to well over 2,000. There's 304 there. But if you started to download a film, for example, it just goes up and up and up. And I've had readings on here which have been like 400, 500,000 microwatts. So it's really inexact. It jumps up all over, all over the show.
They call radiation, the microwatts.
Yeah, so it's the radio frequency. It's the strength of the signal. So that wasn't perhaps the best example, but for example there, that's beeping now. The reason I know that is because the receiver for Apple is right here. That's where all the data comes in. So as soon as you go close to that, you'll get a jump of 12 milliwatts. That's 12,000. So we went from between 28 to 50 microwatts, right, to 12 milliwatts, which is 12,000. So it's 50 to 12,000, effectively.
So
that's the kind of jump
slowly,
we're looking at. Huh?
If you move it slowly from there, halfway to there, how much more does it have? Like now, that's a third.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an exact science, right? So it just jumps up and down. That's what radiation does. It depends on what you're pulling into your machines, right? So if you've got all of your social media apps on, then you're just polling loads of data in, and that's when it goes crazy. If you're on a train and it's looking, it goes crazy because it hasn't got a secure signal. It's just not an exact science. But what I'm trying to illustrate is the levels can go very, very high. And what we're doing is we're touching that, right? And proximity is the main thing that we need to be wary of, right? Anything that we're touching or in our pockets is going to do damage, or next to our ear is going to do damage for reasons that we'll come to.
And what about the AirPods?
AirPods are very, very bad for you because they take the electromagnetic signal and they magnify it here because there's Bluetooth pulling it in, and it just makes it even more radioactive. It's not radioactive, it radiates even more. Radioactive is something different. So we're going to start our explanation with blood cells, and the reason is because we're going to talk about the true concept of the atom. Now, these are blood cells as taken from inside the body, right? And this is really fascinating, because what do you see in this picture? In this picture, you see donuts, right? You see a torus field, right? A torus field of energy. That's what our blood cells are. Now, the scientist that I work with is called Professor Ilija Lakicevic, and his life studies has been about proving what the true concept of the atom and cell are, and he's got a paper about that. And what he's found is that if we take this one, which is really nice and plump, is that there's a space in the middle of every atomic wave field, right? And that space, that empty space, right in the middle of that is a still magnetic point, right? So already we're seeing that there's an inversion of what we're seeing in the physics books, which says that the nucleus, which has all the matter, is supposed to be at the centre of the atom. Well, that's not true. What he's found is that there's a still magnetic point. And around that still magnetic point spins the ring of light. And that's the same in our blood cells as it is for this table, as it is for a tree or a rock or water, right? He says that effectively it's the same across the board. Everything in nature obeys the same principles, right? The reason this is important is because that electrical balance in the cell is what gets compromised by radiation. And we're going to show you that in a second, okay? So the 0 point in the middle is a still magnetic point, and the light ring dives into the 0 point to pull the energy to spin itself, right? And then it follows two phases. It makes itself into the matter, and then it discharges it to the ether, right? So it's literally every cell in your body and every atom in this table and everything that is alive, because this table is alive, funnily enough. Everything is alive in the electrical universe, right? Dives into the 0 point to make itself and then discharges itself. The difference between my body and this table is that I have a mind that can move my body around, right? And we're going to see how important the mind is a bit later on, right? So as mental beings, we can actually fix this problem, right? Because the mind is so strong. So if you imagine that the light ring compresses itself into matter and then discharges itself, and it goes on and off, on and off, on and off, on and off in rapid succession, and the energy recycles itself through the 0 point and then comes in again and then goes out. That is frequency, the oscillation between the compression and the discharge. That is frequency, right? So we have different frequencies in our body. Our liver is a different frequency to our brain, to our heart, and everything else. It's this beautiful orchestra of lots of different frequencies, all acting in divine union to give you your body. And as a mental being, you decide what you have for lunch, right? But you don't decide how your fingernails grow, and you don't decide how your stomach digests food. It just happens, because that is the operating system of your body given to you by the divine creator. So we've got a cell there, and if you imagine that is pretty much in the center of that donut, that would be the 0 point, a connected point, and it has 0 electrical potential. When it's aligned to the geometric center, you have a healthy cell, right? And that interconnected magnetic 0 point field is effectively what we would call the God field, because every atom comes from that point, right? So if you imagine that all the points in every atom have a 0 point in the middle, and that 0 point field is almost the etheric field, then effectively all life comes from that etheric field with divine intelligence, right? So the atom that's in your liver comes through with the divine intelligence to do the job of your liver, right? And so on. So the other thing that's really important is that the 0 point has awareness, and we can talk to it as mental beings, and we can actually affect it. If anyone's ever done Reiki treatment, for example, you can send energy through the 0 point field from one person to another. halfway across the world because that field is connected, right? So the other thing is that this light ring, I think, as we've just spoken about, and jumping about a bit, but basically it's a spinning ring of light, and it is electrical current in motion. It's a light ring, and it has a donut shape or a torus shape, and it borrows energy from the center point, the magnetic point, to spin, and then it compresses into matter and expands into the ether. And what we like to talk about here is Dr. Lakicevic's science, which says that when we have rhythmic balanced interchange between the compression and the expansion, meaning when the compression is in balance with the expansion, we have a really beautiful torus-shaped field. And pretty soon I'm going to show you what happens when that meets a radiation field. So bear that in mind, that perfect model shape. So what we're saying is that this model is not correct, and there's a whole paper about this, but we're going to park that, and I'm going to just say that this is where we're coming from. The nucleus in the middle, where all the matter supposedly is, and the electron flying around the outside, and the proton, etc. That model is not correct. It's actually the 0 point in the middle, still magnetic point, light ring spinning around. So we know that everything in us is electrical, right? We know that because our heart is a big electrical pump. We know that our brains operate on electricity, right? But even just going like this is electricity in motion, right? Because every cell is a spinning ring of electrical current in your body. That means that as vibrational beings, we respond to everything that we connect with, right? Or experience. We respond to good music, we respond to a hug, we respond to that fire or the sunshine, everything in a resonant way, right? Our cells are always looking to be in that perfect torus shape because that denotes balance and love, right? And love is going to be an important part of this. So the reason I've got two guitars here is I want you to imagine that if I put two good guitars together, right, with 6 strings, all in different frequencies, right, and I pluck one of the strings on one of the guitars, what do you think happens to the other guitar?
Echoes. No?
Yeah, kind of. So what happens is the other string, but only the string that was plucked, starts to vibrate as well, right? And it's called sympathetic resonance, right? And it basically shows that something that's vibrating is picked up by something else that's in the same frequency range. But none of the other strings do it, just the one that's in the same range. And this is important because the frequencies that we're walking into every day are in the same range as the frequencies in our bodies. And they're getting closer and closer with 5G, right? And the reason we know that is that the likes of Barry Trower, if you know who he is, have been researching exactly what weapons will kill people in the battlefield. And they do all of this research saying this will harm the liver, this will harm the brain, this will harm the whatever. And all of those frequencies are in 5G, sadly. I'm just going to... So what we have is, imagine that light ring, that torus, is drawn as from the top as kind of like a circle, right? We have all of our cells basically trying to stay in that circle, in that beautiful light ring, right? And along comes a radiation field. A radiation field is characterized... Actually, do you know what? I'm going to play this video now.
The human body is a big electrical antenna, and when each cell, which is a balanced spinning ring of light, meets an imbalanced radiation field, whose 0 point is constantly straying away from its center, the result is that the human cell starts to resonate in sympathy with the radiation field, so it picks up its uncenteredness. It picks up the bad vibe. The cell starts to vibrate with uncenteredness and imbalance. And this puts your body and your immune system under stress, which we've shown you already in the blood samples.
Which we show in these tests, which we're going to come to a bit later on. A bit embarrassing, I'm wearing the same t-shirt as I was.
Yeah. Nobody noticed, don't worry.
There you go. I've only got one t-shirt. I'm like Zuckerberg. So ultimately, we're just trying to say that it's basically when we walk into a radiation field, we pick up the resonance of the radiation field. And there's one characteristic in the radiation field which is different to the radiation of the sun. And that is that the 0 point, instead of staying in the middle, it moves around, right? And it drags the light ring around with it. It's kind of like an agitated wave field, right? And we pick up that agitation, and the 0 point in our cells starts to move around. And we're going to prove that in just a second. The reason why we know that is I've done live blood analysis on myself several times. And I hold a phone with a video playing, which is the strongest type of radiation you can get because you're downloading a lot of data over Wi-Fi or a cell tower. So you hold the phone in your hand, and after 20 minutes, pretty much the whole sample goes like this. It all sticks together. It's called Rouleau syndrome, and basically that denotes that the 0 points in the blood have all just started to stick with each other and attract each other. So the electrical balance of the cells has been compromised, right, by them all sticking together. So that is an undesirable situation, and I've got a video on this. Cells should look like this. If you see these cells here, this is a negative version, right? So there's white inside the cells, but that's actually black, and the cells are actually white, just like we saw in the picture earlier on, right? So this is just the way that blood microscopy works. It inverses the colours or makes them negative. So this is one of the tests that we do, and I've got a video online where it's like 3 minutes of that, 3 minutes of that. And then what we do with my patch is we return it back to that. And we'll show you that in a second. So the whole point is that this agitated wave field has to be brought back from that to centeredness and balance. Because if it's in centeredness and balance, then there's nothing for your body to react to, right? So the challenge has to be to bring that 0 point back to the center of the field. The reason why wave fields, and this is where it gets a bit woo-woo, but that's why we're here, and we're in Ibiza, so I think I have license to go all woo-woo, is about consciousness, right? So everything that we create as human beings has a conscious imprint through the 0 point field, because the 0 point field is aware and it's recording things that we create, right? An example is if I make a love song, it's going to be in good harmony, everyone's going to feel that love that comes through. If I want to make a heavy metal song about killing my friends, it's going to have a completely different vibration, right? You can already feel the vibration if I say a heavy metal song about killing your friends, right? You can feel that vibration inside, right? Whereas if you think of your favourite love song, it's a very different feeling inside your body, right? So the point is that we record the intent and the desire and our consciousness within that 0 point field of the things that we create. And what we have with the electricity grid is a grid, right? It's a master-slave grid. I provide the energy, you come and pay for it, right? Repeat, repeat, repeat. Why do we go to work? To pay the bills, right? Can we get out of it? No, we can't, right? So we have oppression in the resonance of oppression and the resonance of greed within the grid. And there's a famous story about JP Morgan when Tesla was going up and trying to get funding, and he said, hey, I've got free energy for everyone. This is paraphrasing. I've got free energy for everyone. And JP Morgan says, well, where do I put the meter so I can charge everyone? I put money into this, I want to charge everyone. That's what I want to do. And he said, you don't, it's free. We can make it free for everyone. And what happened to Tesla? So my point is that if we understand that that we don't need the electricity grid anymore, and we all spread knowledge that gets us to the point where this is something that we either demand or co-create, then we remove the situation that is 5G, right? And that's the positive message that I have for today, right? So the whole issue is about getting from that to that, because that's that shape and that balance, and that, you know, is, if you like, the transmutation from greed, oppression, agitation, imbalance to perfect balance. That's where we're trying to get to with the 5G field, with the radiation field, man-made radiation field, right? So if you like, the sun already looks like that, and a man-made radiation field will look like that. Just a graphical illustration. So, how do we do that? And this is where it gets really interesting. So Professor Lakicevic has discovered a new unit of energy in our atmosphere. He calls it Deca energy, and he's clairvoyant, so he can see this energy that's come through. So his background is that he was the top researcher at the Max Planck Institute. You know, research professor is pretty much the highest grade you can make as a physics professor. He then had some sort of awakening and realised that all the concepts in physics were wrong. He then channeled how to prove what the right concepts were, and then went back to the physics mainstream, and they threw him out. Because there is a big filter in the science industry which says, unless you're speaking our truth, we'll throw you out. So then he was thinking, well, I need to make products that help people so that it drives the demand and the desire to know my truths. And that's one of the reasons why I'm here speaking his truth on his behalf, but also because I want to help everyone who understands that this works, right? So what he sees in the atmosphere is these tiny units of energy, and they take the form, if you could, it doesn't look very clear here, but ultimately this is a 12-sided dodecahedron. Right? And the dodecahedron in geometry is it houses all of the Platonic solids, right? So it's the master geometric shape. But this one's different because it has cones of spinning light inside it. And those cones of spinning light go into the center and then across. So there's 6 pairs exchanging energy across the structure of the dodecahedron. And that spinning light never runs out, okay? And if you think about electricity, basically all it is a wire with copper running heat and light down the wire. That's all it is, right? It's nothing more sophisticated than that. So if we're trying to replace it, we need to think of just, you know, how we can replicate that heat and light. So the crucial thing about this is that it responds to conscious human intent. Meaning you can program it with your mind, right? The same mind that moves your body around and decides what to have for lunch, right? And this is what he does. He basically puts an intention into this Deca energy because he knows what is imbalanced in the radiation field. It is an imbalance between the making of the light ring and the discharge. It's an imbalance of that. So the discharge is actually more than the making, right? And therefore the 0 point is moving around and it's not set into the center, right? He basically brings that 0 point back to the center by the program that he sets within this structure. And the good news is that can be used for many other things. You know, he's experimenting at the moment with an air conditioning unit which doesn't require a battery or a cable, right? It's literally like a wine bottle you put on the table, and it keeps 18 degrees in the room. It doesn't matter if it's -2 or +36. So these are things that he knows that if he proves the concept, then everyone goes, aha, you know, and then people ask him how he did it, rather than what's the theory? Oh, that theory is rubbish. You know, I get called a quack all the time for talking about this sort of stuff, but I really, you know, I know it works in my product, so I have faith that it's real. So we're going to do a muscle test in a second, but first of all I just wanted to talk about another resonant effect, right? So one of the things that we do to prove that our product works is that we get a glass of water and we put a phone on top of it and we make a phone call for 5 minutes, right? And the water absorbs the radiation because that's what water does. You know, if you've seen the experiments of Dr. Emoto, you know that you can go up and say, I love you, or I hate you, or, you know, John Lennon, or whatever it is, and the water responds because the water is conscious, because the 0 point in the middle of every atom in the water is listening, right? So when you put your phone above the water and you radiate the water, then it comes out chaotic. No structure, no balance, no 0 point in the middle. Right? But when you put our patch on the phone and make a 5-minute phone call and then test the water, you get beautiful crystals. Yeah, so that's another test that we've done. We're going to do in a second, for anyone who's brave, we're going to do a muscle test, and I'm going to show you that that works. And then there's a video of our live blood analysis as well, which shows you that that works. So this is the point where I ask if anyone would like to do the muscle test with me. Yeah, brilliant. The way that I do it is I ask you to go like that behind your back. So if you could just stand here, so we get that on camera. I'm going to ask you to turn around there so you guys can see it. So what I'll do is I'll push into your hands and you have to resist. Okay, so I'm going to push down. We're going to find... right, so I'm going to push down and you're going to resist. Okay, so we're going to remember that strength. And now here's a phone which was only 2 feet away, right? So this demonstrates the importance of proximity. So I need to make sure that's on, right? Mm-hmm. Is it? Yeah. Can you just get a light on it just to make sure it's
right,
on?
Yeah, it's on.
It's not on Wi-Fi?
No,
or anything?
it's not on.
Alright, so put that in your pocket. Great, and then we'll do the same thing again.
Oops. Okay, I think that was...
Alright, so how did that feel?
Just, well, it's just, yeah, I can't stand.
Right.
I can't be
Yeah.
still.
So what we're demonstrating here is that 0 point in the middle of all her cells is now starting to move around from the centre, and the balance of the body is now affected, right? So what we're now going to do, if you don't mind, if you take your phone, is we're going to put this on, and you are very lucky because you get to take one of these away with you. There we go. So we're going to put that on, put it in your pocket. And this is just to show that it's instant, so just step forward a little bit. Okay, and same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you see the difference?
I'm not cheating.
Right.
It's for real. It's for real.
No,
it's
crazy.
So did everyone see that?
Wow.
I mean, like, if I'd have done that the first time, we would have been somewhere over here in the kitchen and probably out the window. So you see that, it's electrical, right? It basically, the electricity in the patch has talked to the radiation field, centered it, balanced it, and then your body responded instantly, right? So that's what we do, and that's our solution for radiating devices, right? But obviously, we still have an issue with the bigger picture, which is that 5G is going to come in and destroy most life, right? So we need to be wary.
In the sticker, there's some kind of Deca energy.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. That's it. So yeah, that Deca energy is imprinted within the sticker, and it lasts forever. So, because the Deca energy is always operational. If you like, to make it simpler to understand, the Deca energy carries a prayer for the highest form of light to come in and override the imbalance and the toxicity of the radiation field. And that is perpetuated, right?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So yeah, I mean, just tell everyone how you felt, right? Because I often get, accused of being, fudging the test or whatever, because it's really important that you check in and just say how you felt the second time.
I mean, I totally felt like when you tested with the phone in my pocket,
Yeah.
that it brought me out of balance. Just
Right.
I really tried to resist and give myself the proof that the phone is not that bad.
Yeah.
But it's like it was really like this.
Yeah.
And then you put it and I didn't do any effort when you put the sticker on, and it was just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is literally like your body just aligning itself with electrically with the 0 point dialed into the middle, and all your cells are aligned, strong, and that's it. That's what we want, right? That's what we want in our bodies.
I would really like to see like a blind test, like you have something like what looks like a phone, and you put it in your pocket, and then you don't know which one is in the
Like a
pocket.
placebo.
Like we know it, like number A or number B, and then you do it. I would like to do that because this is kind of like I don't know.
So that's an interesting point,
yeah.
and it's a good point. What we find is that the mind, well, I've actually asked my kinesiologist friend about this, and I said, we have to do a blind, double blind, this, that and the other. And he said, no, the mind has to be involved in the test.
This is part of the whole deal.
That was his point, yeah. It is, the mind can't be tricked, because then you get an incorrect result, right?
So the mind is part of it.
Yeah.
The mind has to be part of it, yeah.
Yeah.
So, that was his response, so I take that as the important one. This test is obviously not the only test that we do, but it's the only one I can show you right here, right? Because we can't do live blood analysis while we're having dinner, unfortunately. But you see what I mean? This is what is available to us to show you the electrical imbalance and then the restoration of the balance in the body. But I fully understand that you shouldn't just see that one test and go, that's it. Which is why we're doing tests on heart rate variability as well, because we know that these things change the rhythms of the heart, and the heart is at all times connecting with all of the other organs in the body, sending messages back and forth, right? And so if you disrupt the heart, then you put all of the organs in the body under stress. So if you can prove that the heart rate variability was not affected, then that's major for us. Yeah, and I'm actually going to put the price up when we've got those tests back, because I am literally adding years to people's lives by marketing.
I can feel when I'm too long on a computer working,
Yep.
that I feel very anxious and very nervous, and
Right.
that my heart rate changes. That's for
Right.
sure.
Well, that is it, and there's lots of mental issues that are going to be more and more obvious and more prevalent. Sleep issues, mental issues. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
So this is it. It affects every cell in our body, and therefore our mood, and therefore our sleep, and therefore everything that we're doing. Right. So that's what I'm trying to do is two things, or three things. First of all, explain why it's happening. Secondly, rebalance everything. But thirdly, give everyone the truth and a way that we can see the future without this imbalanced frequency or wave fields being pumped at us 24/7, especially in classrooms.
Do you know the Tesla plate?
I have heard of lots of Tesla solutions.
Yeah.
Actually, we are kind of a Tesla solution because
I have a Tesla plate necklace, and they told me as well that you can look it up online as well, that it's protecting from radioactivity.
So, in general, all I would say, because there's a lot of products out there, and I muscle test most of them, and hardly any of them work, right? So that's really important. Tim, we did one with 2 products on your phone yesterday, and you weren't strong, right? And you went strong when you put ours on.
And I actually have the Tesla plate in my wallet since many years, like 12, 14 years. Just have it always in my wallet.
And I'm not here to dismiss anyone else's product.
I was just curious.
Yeah. So all I'll say is that, and this is really important, because when you choose a product, you need to know that it's been tested on the human body, because many products try and test the field, the radiation field. Oh, the radiation field went from this down to that. Well, if it goes down to that, then you don't get data, right? But also, even a field that's like that can do harm, right? It's just a question of, well, the three things that affect you are proximity, how close you are, right? Is it in your pocket, next to your head? You know, and it is, right? Most people keep it in their pockets or make a phone call like that, right? Strength of signal, right? And we've already shown that these things beep all the time when you hold your radio frequency meter next to a phone, next to a laptop, next to anything. So the strength of the signal is very, very strong, and then the exposure, well, we're what, 7-8 hours a day, you know, we're exposing ourselves. So those three factors, we're over the top on all of them, way over the top on all of them. So that's why it's such an issue. Yeah. So when you choose a product, you need to see that it's tested on the human body, right? And that's what we try and do with our blood samples. With the muscle test, we've got the heart rate variability to come. We've also got a thermal test on the skin to see whether that energy that's absorbed in the skin changes, and we think that will be a very good result as well. And then there's the water test as well. And actually, the water test is the most important, because it shows that you've taken a field that was imbalanced and you've transmuted it to the point where water has picked up the positive balanced resonance of the new field, right? And that's good news for your body, because your body is 75% water, and in fact your blood is over 90% water, right? Which is why your blood goes like this, because of all the water that's in there.
And this delta energy, how it's everywhere, or how do they get it from the air?
The Deca energy, yeah, apparently it's coming down in the rain, and it's the scientist noticed that it first came down in 2007, and what he does is he gets a big magnet, like a cone-shaped magnet with spirals of magnets inside, and he goes into the hills and he just watches them jump in, and then when it's full he takes them back to his laboratory and works with them, and through a process of trial and error he's come up with the solution. And like I said, the solution for me, every time I test it, works brilliantly well.
So it's like in water drops of rain.
Yeah, effectively, yeah. I mean, this is the part where I'm afraid I can't fully answer it because I'm not seeing it, but he sees it, he shows us what it looks like, and that's it, that's what he sees. Tiny little units jump into his contraption, and then he consciously connects with them, programs them, and then puts them in the patch.
So it's not really like a chemical process, it's like we thought that he puts the energy into a sticker.
That's right. And that's the good news that I have, is that he's not unique. We could all do that if we spent 30 years in the Max Planck Institute, understood physics, had an awakening, saw the new energy, realised that we could, he's quite a gift to us, because he's gone through this extraordinary journey and come out with something that is great news, I think, for society.
You cannot put it under a microscope and actually see the shape.
I don't think so. I have yet to challenge him to do that, and I would like to, and at some point we will see that, I'm sure. But at the moment, that would solve a lot of problems for me. Look at my name.
And Omnia, the brand, it sounds so familiar to me. They have any other products?
Well, I think it used to be a search engine in the 1980s. If you remember the 1980s, I don't think you do, but I do, and there were lots of search engines apart from Google, like Alta Vista and stuff like that. But as far as I know, Omnia, it means everything, or all. It means all in Latin. So it's not original, but the reason I like it is it's Omnia. It's like do, re, mi. It's memorable. It has Om in it. For me, that's really important, because Om is the resonance,
Delivers the sound,
delivers the balanced sound, and that was important.
So no other products?
We have one that we are developing, which is another sticker, and you put it on this water bottle, and then all the water comes out as structured like this. So we're gonna. I need a little bit of investment to do that, but but that it's not expensive to do that. It's the same thing as these stickers. We just gotta, so we just got to get a sticker a little bit like that, put it on, make it applicable to a water bottle, and then people can have good pure water.
Is it something similar like the orgone energy from Reich?
Yeah, so I love crystals. I have tested a lot of crystal products, and they just don't pass the muscle test. That's all I can say. I do believe that crystals do have a beneficial effect, but the effect, as far as I can see, is that they clean up the air, right? So if there's lots of air carrying all of this radiation frequency, it cleans it up a little bit. But it's just a completely different story when you get these in your pockets, because they're so strong. The field strength is so strong, and orgone doesn't protect you on the muscle test. That's all I know. I don't mean to be dismissive of orgone or anything else, because everyone in this space is trying to do the right thing, but we have to have a criteria for selecting the product, right? And that's where I feel that I'm doing my best. So, like I said, I'm just trying to show you things that I've tested, things that I feel work. If you feel moved by that, then obviously you're very welcome to protect yourselves.
And you gave this technology to Yamamoto, and he was the one that tested the water like this?
Dr. Emoto, when he was still alive, his Hardo Life Institute tested this for us. We want to do another one of these with 5G. But 5G is just ridiculous because it sort of, it doesn't really exist yet, right? I actually had to buy a 5G phone because of what I do, right? I try and turn 5G off as much as I can, or even 4G off as much as I can, because I know that that's not good. But 5G never comes up on my phone because it's not live yet. They've sold us who would believe it? The telcos have lied to us.
Because they were testing it here in the summer,
right?
Driving a van around and testing 5G.
I'm sure they were. Yeah. So his
was that tower in Santa Eulalia, was that really a 5G tower?
It would have what I understand are, so 5G is lots of different things, right? Everyone just thinks it's one thing, but it's not. They're basically putting lots of frequency bands in at once, right? So they're fortifying the signals that are a lower level, right? So the fallback system of 4G, they're putting a lot more 4G in, and then they're adding some, higher, what do they call it? Millimeter waves, I've gone blank now. I do know this, but some faster fields that don't travel as far, right? Those can be sub-gigahertz, what they call sub-gigahertz, which is like less than 1 gig. At the moment on Wi-Fi, for example, you've got 2.56 gig or 2.6 gig, something like that. Now, getting into the darker side of what is being what we're subjected to, you could argue that because the military knows what frequencies harm the human body, then the telcos probably do too, right? Because they would have had to get clearance or safety checks at some point, and they would have had to look at all the research that was done, right? And the military, this is all available online. The military has tested these frequencies and shown that they are dangerous, right? So, all of this information needs to be shared. But one thing that I've heard is that the reason why 2.5 gig or 2.6 gig is used on Wi-Fi a lot is because it's in the same resonance as certain parts of your brain. And that's why Alzheimer's has been on the up. Because people are literally bombarding themselves with these imbalanced frequencies, and because of the absolute resonant effect between certain frequencies in your body and the frequency that's coming in from Wi-Fi, if that's imbalanced, then the first thing that's going to happen is that part of your body that's resonating at the same frequency is going to suffer. Make sense? So we know that 5G has the ability of going from 2.5 gig right up to something like, I mean, some people say it's 90 gig, but I know 90 gig will literally drop you and kill you straight away. So it's never going to be 90 gig. Or is it? Who knows? But the point is that it's most likely to go up to 6 gig and then 24 gig or whatever, and we'll probably feel it at 24 gig. Because at the moment everyone's walking around and everyone's like, well, I'm not feeling it, it's not a problem, right? But it's the same thing as smoking cigarettes for 30 years, right? After 30 years your lungs go black, but you didn't feel it for 30 years. You didn't feel your lungs go black. You know, we kid ourselves that we know everything that's going on in our body, but we actually really don't, right? And it's the same thing where I say, do you feel your fingernails grow? No, you don't. Do you feel your lungs going black? No, you don't. But you kid yourself that you would know about it, right? So what I'm showing you now is what your body is feeling, right? And your body, if you had a chat with it right now and said, do I need this in my life? Through the muscle test, it's saying, yes, you do. But anyway, so that's what I'm here to. Thank you so much for being here and joining me, and I hope you learned something. I hope you appreciated the knowledge. Like I said, we have these patches and they last forever, and once you put one on your laptop, one on your phone, one on your Wi-Fi router, one in your car, they last forever. So if anyone wants to take one away, you're most welcome.
Yeah, like if you wear earplugs with your phone, and my son is doing all the time, should you also have 2 of those in the earplugs?
Well, I don't think that's necessary. But you know what? I haven't muscle tested someone with AirPods or whatever they're called, but I should. But the theory is that the main receiver of the imbalanced frequency is being harmonized. Therefore, the AirPods will be carrying balanced energy as well. So I will say no to that, but I will make sure that I go back and test that, because I don't have a pair of those AirPods. Are they AirPods?
Yeah.
AirPods, yeah. And again, I have to be careful, because if I do a video about AirPods, then Apple will be, But what would we rather have, the truth or brain cancer?